So welcome to the Out of Services video series on cybersecurity risk management. Today I have with me Mr. Sadeed Tirmizey, and he's an experienced ICT Operations and Security Specialist with over 12 years of experience, and he currently works for Queensland Health. So everything Sadeed says today, I just want to make that clear, is his personal experience, his personal journey, and I'm very excited to have Sadeed on the interview today. So welcome, Sadeed.
Thank you, Anka. Nice to be talking to you today.
Oh, thank you so much. So tell me, what has been the most significant moment in your working career that made you switch to cybersecurity? Because I've looked at your background. You know, there was a lot of ITIL, IT service management. There was some IT security management. But what was the moment you went, no, cybersecurity is the way to go for me?
I think the chain of events flowed in that direction, and cybersecurity was something that apparently was meant for me. That's how I take it. However, if we ask for one single significant moment, at one point in my career, perhaps about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a big disaster within one of the companies that I was working at that I got involved in. And actually, 6-7 years ago, it was longer than that. It was about 12 years ago.
Oh, wow. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
It does fly. And so working on that disaster, actually, and working with the teams emphasized to me the importance of security and few of the issues that were overlooked to implement that solution. And I felt at that moment in time, if that consideration had taken place, then we may not have had to face this disaster. And working in that business, and without being specific about the business, that did result in a significant customer impact, significant financial impact, and also, flow-on effect of everything else with any disaster, resulting in a disaster recovery scenario being activated. So obviously, did emphasize the importance of security that the organization did not even take into account.
Yeah. So looking back, I mean, it's easy to have 20/20 hindsight. What would be a typical thing that could have been done that would have prevented or minimized the impact of this significant event?
Just being prepared from a security perspective, just having the risk assessment done. And obviously, at times, what has historically happened is security is seen as a block holder. Like, if you go to security, if you look at security application, they'll tell us not to go. It's not about that. Security or the security assessment engagement is more about identifying the risks we are entering into. So the business obviously has to proceed. We still have to make money, and we still have to provide healthcare. Planes have to fly. Regardless of which business you have to work in, you're not going to impede on that business. But what we need to ensure is, from a security perspective, identify what are the potential risks. And if they were to eventuate, have a preparation plan in place. And so the management is aware, the relevant team is aware. It's just about being prepared and being to enact on those actions when the situation requires. If that preparation is taken appropriately, then obviously, you can't really stop incidents from happening. You can't really stop disasters from happening. It's just about being prepared and being able to contain any damage as a result.
Yeah. So it's all about preparedness and actually testing your preparedness and going through your processes and procedures to making sure that everything works as designed, and you know what to do when the proverbial hits the fan.
Exactly. Right.
So how do you see the difference? Because you started off with IT security management, so specifically around IT services. So how do you see the difference in approach between IT security management and cyber security management?
It's a very interesting question, because obviously I think the lines are really blurred, but I think it's becoming a bit quite clear as to where the difference lies. In my personal view, IT security is specific to an IT tool. So IT security still is part and parcel of cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is a bit more encompassing. You look at, for example, the engagement with the business. If you looked at IT security, I'm just focused on this tool. I'm just, this is my firewall. This is my tool. I really need to make sure this is configured securely. That's where IT security came from. But cybersecurity is end-to-end, everything. Like, is my engagement in place? Is my training and awareness in place? Do I have a governance, risk, and compliance? Is that model in place? Are the policies, right policies in there? Are the right standards in there? So obviously just having that 360-degree view of the entire security framework and making sure that that covers IT security, but there is a lot out there outside of IT systems as well.
Yeah.
If we just focused on one piece of technology, then we're missing a significant number of other pieces.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say, as an analogy, like, within IT service management and ITIL, you talk about business continuity management, and then as a basically a subset of that, your IT service continuity management. In your view, do you see the same analogy with cybersecurity management being more at that strategic business level, and then IT security being a subset of that, or are they completely different fields?
I wouldn't say they're completely different. I think IT security is encompassed in the overall cybersecurity. Cybersecurity sits at a higher level, but it does encompass IT security, information security, governance piece, the cyber defense piece. There's a number of components. I think the word cyber was obviously introduced 20 or 30 years ago when the internet got started.
Yeah.
But then from a cybersecurity perspective, we're sitting, because obviously now IT is not only localized. IT is not sitting in your organization only. It's actually connected.
Yeah.
I am in this organization, but I can't really function if all my IT systems are only within this organization. I need to widen my borders. I need to expand my horizon. I need to be able to interconnect with other systems, not only within Australia, with countries out, beyond Australia.
Yeah.
There are certain legislative or other restrictions in place. But obviously, taking those into account, that needs to happen. That's where cyber basically goes beyond the limits.
Yeah.
So IT limits you, even information security limits you. Cyber is, hey, it's expanding. The world is expanding. We need to make sure the security will expand as well.
Yeah. So in your world, what is your definition of cybersecurity? Because, when you talk to a lot of people about cybersecurity and cybersecurity risk management, some people go in this direction, other people go in that direction. And what is your definition of cybersecurity?
Again, boils down to the same model of security. Is basically confidentiality, integrity, and availability, ensuring that information that the organization is processing is being done so in a confidential manner. The information is being dealt with and processed with the integrity being maintained, and the information is available as per the business requirements.
Yeah.
And cyber basically just expands the scope of that CIA model. Whereas with IT security, that's still the same CIA model. It's limited to that asset or limited to that model. With cyber, the exact same model. It's just the expansion of that model beyond that asset. That's what it is. It's still same security. From a terminology perspective, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter how the breach is done. As soon as it's done via internet or via external networks, or that's when you start talking about your cybersecurity. When it's done more internally or other types of threats and vulnerabilities, you talk about IT security, specifically on the technology.
You're probably right, but the thing is, it still forms part of cybersecurity because it's now. Really
I just want to narrow it down, because it's such a buzzword, and everybody has that's hackers, and that's people trying to bring your website down, or that's people trying to get through firewalls to get financial or health-based data, or there's data breaches, and then there's GDPR that pops out of the head office. That there's all these. People go. That's what I meant with people go on tangents. Whereas other people that I've spoken with, they go like, this cybersecurity, it's business security. It just happens to be an attack through cyberspace, internet, external networks.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, so cyber is basically just expanding the scope.
Yeah.
It goes down to the actual security of information, going down to the basic confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So again, depending on what the compromise is, if you're looking at it more from a breach or an incident perspective, you go bottom of where the actual compromise has happened. If it's at an asset, you start with that asset. Whether you call it IT security or cyber security, it doesn't really matter. At that moment in time, it's a breach. And then depending on where the investigation leads, that's how you report on it.
Yeah.
Have I answered your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's popping up in my head now is you have a very extensive background in infrastructure design, in IT security, in operations. Is there a specific training path that has helped you to get to where you are now as a cybersecurity specialist?
There is some certain certifications that I have done on the on my career pathway just to expand my breadth of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you ask if there has been a certain qualification that has helped me break into this path, I would say probably not. It's just been a combination of experience and my basic IT skills and IT technological background that has really helped me in the end. Obviously, there's a number of other certifications that ISACA and ISC, CISSP, ISM allows you to basically excel in various areas depending on your option.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk myth busting. What is the biggest myth around cybersecurity risk management that's floating around? And, you know, every time when you see it on LinkedIn or on some of the blogs, you go like, oh, really?
Look, there's one, obviously, there's a lot of talk about information being secure, and what I usually say at this moment in time is there's no 100% security.
Yeah.
If anybody talks about, if anybody comes out and says, you know, my organization is totally secure, there's no security breach, that can't really be right. It's obviously, you know, depending on what mechanisms you have, what's the actual impact. That's where you know what the security state is. But to say that there's 100% security, that's not really true.
Okay, so when you see a vendor saying like, you know, buy our tool or buy our solution, you'll be 100% secure. We guarantee all attacks from you know, cyber criminals. That's when you sort of go like, not true.
Exactly, that's right.
And
the other thing is, lately there's a number of other zero-day vulnerabilities that are coming out. Obviously, there is a tendency in the industry to, at times, you know, over panic. What we've got to do is ensure that, you know, each information that comes out, how does it impact your organization? It needs to be assessed appropriately and not just enter into response or panic mode. Yeah. So lately, you know, with a number of some high-profile threats and attacks, without naming any specific ones, has resulted in some significant impacts, which obviously, you know, you're all on your nerves. And on an operational side, if something very similar happens, you get into a, you know, tendency of knee-jerk reaction. Yeah. So what my take on that is, you know, each event and each information needs to be assessed on its own merit, and then the response mechanism needs to be activated upon.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does Australia rank in comparison to other countries in the world in cybersecurity readiness, awareness around cybersecurity risk management, or preparedness? Because you mentioned preparedness is really important. So when you go to conferences and talk to other specialists in your area, how do Australian companies rate in relation to international companies?
I believe our maturity in security is, from an awareness perspective, they're very well aware, and each organization is taking the right steps to ensure appropriate security measures are implemented in place. So I've been to a number of workshops and conferences and speaking to industry counterparts. Everybody is talking about security and ensuring that, you know, relevant measures are being implemented. What we are really dependent upon is overseas technology. A lot of technology is coming from overseas, and which we are heavily reliant upon. There has been obviously some resulting implications, because obviously, you know, being in the government sector, there's that, you know, does my information needs to be in Australia? If there's any technology that I'm relying upon is coming from overseas, how much can I trust that? And then there's various antivirus technologies or your protection technologies. Obviously, with a number of, with where the industry is heading, you're really reliant upon cloud solutions. Yeah. And where do you draw the line? How much trust can you have, and how much trust there is in the contractual regulations? That's really boils down to each organization and each industry. But, you know, coming back to the original point, the awareness is generally is obviously there, and the maturity is heading in the right direction.
Yeah,
If there was a bit more innovative input from within the Australian industry, that would really help the maturity.
Yeah, so actually take the awareness into action and really grow the industry in a more mature way. So you made an interesting point about the way cloud computing is being used in many organizations. And, I've dealt with a lot of financial institutions and government organizations in Australia. And the moment you start talking about cloud computing, data is not allowed to be stored overseas. There's a lot of regulations around that. Yet still, most organizations are moving towards more cloud. From a cybersecurity point of view, is that a more secure option? Because, cloud-based organizations, that's what they do. That's their business. So you would assume that they put a lot more effort into readiness, awareness, and having, prepared plans ready in the event of an attack. Or is that a false sense of security that we're getting?
I think it's something in between. Obviously, again, boils down to the trust between the industry or your business and the actual vendor, how much trust there is, and also your actual business model and the risk assessment. We just need to be aware as an organization, regardless of whether it's a government organization or a private one, that we are now trusting this is my information, and that's the most valuable asset. I'm now trusting another organization with my information. Do they have the relevant security mechanism in place? Would they be doing it better than me? For example, our precious assets or jewelry, we rather than keep it in our own homes, we put it in a bank locker because we trust the bank security and their locker mechanism a bit more than us, because it has gone through and the awareness has been there, that risk assessment has been done. Again, goes back to the same thing with our information. Am I going to be able to provide a bit more security in my area? Yes, I'm taking very reasonable measures. I'm now trusting vendor X to host my information. Are they taking significant measures or similar sort of? That assessment needs to happen and decisions made accordingly. So it's not to say no, it's again, being aware of what the actual risk is and making sure that, we are making an informed decision rather than just jumping into it.
Yeah. And that's the crux, isn't it? Being able to make informed decisions, because when you know what the risk profile is, when you know what kind of risk you may run into, you can make a better informed, educated decision rather than just, going off on a tangent.
And to be honest, that's where the industry is heading. So it would be really naive to say, I need to keep control of my assets or my information and not go to the cloud, because obviously that's not a scalable option. With where the industry is heading and where the information is expanding, we really need to leverage off the power that the cloud is providing us. It's just that, making that informed decision and making sure that we are prepared accordingly.
Yeah, because that would be the equivalent of having all your money in a sock under your mattress.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what's the biggest risk currently? I mean, it's 2018. Cybersecurity and cybercrime is getting more and more in the public eye. It's getting more and more into mainstream media. Businesses out there, small, medium, large business, government agencies, what's the biggest risk that they're running at the moment?
The biggest risk is basically loss of information or compromise of your information. Comes two folds: either the confidentiality of your information being compromised, and even more significant is the risk of integrity of the information being compromised. Either or happens, the business is really impacted, because both of the things come directly to the reputation of your business. If you're a private business, reputation is extremely paramount. For example, if you're a known airline and then something hits the media, obviously your business model gets impacted. You look at the breach that few of the known companies in US faced, to name Target and Sony, a few breaches. There were strong repercussions as a result of those negative publicity. So that's basically what it boils down. And from a government perspective, it boils down to your trust relationship between us and the public. Making sure that the service is being provided in a secure fashion, and the public continues to trust the government organization with their information.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can we prepare for that? I mean, you talked about preparedness and readiness and awareness, but just in a really practical way. As a business, take myself as an example. As a business owner, and we have students, we have information. There's all sorts of data. We have stuff in the cloud. We have stuff on servers. There's multiple machines, multiple staff, remote logins, work from home, work from the office. Just your normal stock standard business. What should I do to prepare myself or to prepare my business to be more secure, for lack of a better word?
Being prepared to respond, and to be able to be prepared to respond, you need to have mechanism in place to detect anything untoward that has happened. There's multiple. If you want to enter into a solution mode, I was wanting not to go into solution mode, but I'm more than happy to talk about it. So
no, you don't have to go into solution mode. I just, from a practical, it could be an awareness point of view, but what should business owners, what should they know and what should they be aware of to be prepared and to be ready and to be more vigilant, for lack of a better word?
Security, basic security awareness training should be made mandatory for, if you have a small business or a medium business, regardless of the size of the business, each staff member should be aware of the basic security responsibilities. So that plays into the detection mechanism. Over 90% of cyber threats or security threats enter into an organization via very, very, simple looking email. Usually triggers it. So having the staff members and having your resources well trained to recognize that threat goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then the next layer up is having some technological solutions in place to be able to detect any intrusions or cyber threat if it starts to eventuate. And then having the relevant, depending on the size, mechanism in place to respond to any threat that is eventuating. If you're a medium-sized, large-sized organization, having your own team. If you're a really smaller organization, having some sort of arrangement in place with a small security company, to trigger those instant response activities off.
Yeah.
So it's again, boils down to planning, preparing, and then being able to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. And as an IT professional, like as an IT consultant or, a professional working in the industry, what would you recommend? Because cybersecurity is not going to go anywhere. So that's a given. So what would you recommend people focus on to solidify their career or to future-proof their career?
Do you want to repeat that question for me, please?
Yeah, so IT professionals or IT consultants, you just spoke about the business owner, but for people that work in the IT industry, what do you recommend they do, or how do they prepare for the rest of their career, to future-proof their career? Because cybersecurity, that's a given. So every IT professional should be aware or should be active in the cybersecurity risk management arena. So what's your advice? What's your recommendation for people moving forward?
Yeah. Look, whether it's cybersecurity or IT in general has been an evolving industry. So the best future-proofing advice I can probably give is being on your toes and being able to adopt with new technology. For example, even if I just focus on Microsoft, and being an MCSE was a really big thing 15 years ago. But if you still had MCSE 2003, then you're already obsolete. So keeping up with technology and making sure that you adapt your technological skills as the technology evolves is you're set. The other thing is that I've acquired, working in the industry in general, not only security, but also soft skills matter a lot. Being technologically aware, being a really good technologist is really good. You need that to succeed. But obviously, to excel further and making sure, from future-proofing perspective, just don't only be a technological professional. Be a person as well, being able to communicate, being able to interact with the business, understanding, the stakeholder requirements. If you equip yourselves with those suitable soft skills, then I believe that you're probably future-proofing your career anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense, especially for cybersecurity, because you mentioned it is a business risk. It's not so much a technology risk. It's a business impact, a business risk. So the stakeholders for cybersecurity risk management will be at that business level, will be at the executive or senior management level. So to be able to communicate.
Exactly. And then going back to one of your original questions, from between the differentiation between cybersecurity and IT security, the focus had been too much on technology. And where it's now coming out and is going a bit higher level. Yes, technology is still important. We are still reliant upon it, but that's not everything. There's a lot to an organization beyond technology, and we need to ensure that the technology is evolved. And we have a team or technology solution that is driven by the business rather than the other way around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Anything else I forgot to ask, or that you can think of that you really want to share with the people that are watching or listening?
I believe we have covered mostly everything. And if there's, last important advice that I can give out is, just reiterating my original point, we cannot go away from being exposed to cybersecurity threats or incidents. That's a given. That's something that's going to happen. The best thing that we can do is equipping ourselves to be able to detect when it happens and have appropriate plans in place to be able to respond if it does happen. So it's just about preparing, preparing, and being able to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Sadeed. I really appreciate it that your willingness to share your experiences and your stories. If people want to get in touch with you to discuss this further, or if they have more questions, how can they reach out to you?
I'm available on LinkedIn, so my LinkedIn profile. So I'm more than happy to be connected via LinkedIn and have further chats in there.
Excellent. And I'll put your public LinkedIn profile in the description box under the video as well. Lovely. Thank you so much for your time, Sadeed, and have a lovely day.
You too. Bye-bye.